This past week, we had 4 shows, each of which had a good to excellent main event. There were some terrific title matches, a few new challengers, and unfortunately, a few injuries. We're going to talk about those. We'll preview Saturday's event in Hokkaido, answer your questions, and talk about the passing of Kuniaki Kobayashi. So with Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Steven Conway, of course, like I mentioned. Jeremy Finstone's with me this week, and it has been a very busy week. We had a lot of stuff to watch, and while the undercards weren't necessarily full of surprises, they sprinkled in a few things for us. They sprinkled in some news. They built some things, and really, I thought, used the time well to establish some storylines going forward that'll be resolved at these big events. Sometimes, Jeremy, when I watch these Road to shows, they feel very similar, and I thought there was something each night that I enjoyed here. So, am I going out of my seat for all this stuff? Well, the main events, yeah, a couple of them, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
true, sure.
I thought each show was worth my time this week. I enjoyed it. What were your thoughts watching Road to Destruction?
I felt like there was something linear, like from night 1 to night 4, they had a through line of what they wanted to do and where they wanted to be by the end of the 4 nights, and everything kind of built on each other, built on each night passively. And there were matchups that were consistent through the whole thing that I was just in love with on the undercard. But on the most part, yeah, like fun, but not required viewing, if that makes any sense.
Right, and we'll go over the main themes that we were just mentioning here earlier. If you don't have time to watch all this stuff, we'll pick it up here at the show, on our show. And it was leading up to a tour of Hokkaido that's coming up. We're not going to see a whole lot of that. In fact, we're only going to see Saturday's show on that. But what they gave us was real nice. So, like I said, we're just going to go over those. And we also have a couple of injuries to talk over. We're going to get to those when we come across that story, when we go through these cards. And unfortunately, there's a lot we don't know. So as of right now, as we're going on the air here with this show, Thursday, 4:30 p.m. In Central Time Zone, we don't know how bad Jake Lee is hurt. We don't know how bad Ren Narita is hurt. We're going to talk a little bit about how it happened when we get to it. But as of right now, both of them have been pulled off cards for now. Neither one has a timetable for their return. For Lee, that's probably, it could very well be because they just don't know yet at all. It's possible the injuries.
I don't even think I know how Ren got hurt.
Yeah, I watched both matches to see if I could pick it out, and Narita's is much harder. Lee, we know exactly when, but with Narita, it is harder to pick out. And they also have said less about him, Narita, which makes me think the injury might be a little bit less than severe than Lee's. They just mentioned that they reconfigured the September 11th show, but they haven't said he'll be missing significant time yet or anything like that. They really haven't said that about Lee either, except he's off just about
Lee's completely right now. I don't think they even put a news note about. There's no black and white lion mark note on Lee yet.
Yeah, well, the only thing that's on NJPW 1972 is that they just said he's hurt. He's been pulled off of this show. That match has been canceled, and we wish him a speedy recovery. But absolutely nothing.
So for the 14th, okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He's off the show Saturday in Norubetsu.
So that's the interesting thing. Is there's only one show between now and like September 29th.
One televised show, one show that's going to be on NJPW World, but there is a whole tour of Hokkaido that's going on after that show. But I also looked at the website, and on the schedule, they list the matches. Each one of those tour through Hokkaido shows only has 2 matches listed, and it's the LIJ United Empire, either 8-man tag, 10-man tag, and then the War Dogs crew versus the Bishamon crew, Bishamon and Ishii, and the Hantai.
So for the Yoshihashi Finley, and then
but not a full card. And they put Ghetto in there anywhere where you would expect Jake Lee's name to be.
And I guess you could kind of figure that you're going to see a little bit of Sonata and Zack Sabre Jr. matching up in the next tour as well. So
you'd think, but they haven't said.
Yeah. And then House of Torture, maybe just 5 guys as well. You know, you got DOUKI and Kinemaru now. So there are a lot of irons in the fire. I honestly think right now, despite like this rash of really like sudden injuries, New Japan's kind of cooking.
Yeah.
You know, like they got stuff going on. These shows, like there was stuff happening, and I was watching them like these are some great matches.
Yeah, there were some excellent matches. So why don't we dive into this and we'll just go through them. We're not going to touch on every single match from every single show, but we'll get the overarching themes and we'll talk about the big ones. So it all began in Yamanashi, and that was Shingo Takagi's 20th anniversary event. That was last Saturday, and it was at the Messe Yamanashi. Attendance was good, about 1,678 people in a not very huge building, so it was pretty full. And there was a whole row of flowers across the back. People had sent bouquets congratulating Shingo. There'd be a video we're going to talk to a little bit later in a tribute to Shingo Takagi on his 20th anniversary. But it all began with a singles match, Daiki Nagai and Masatora Yasuda. So these are the newest of the young lions. I bring this up because they've basically been getting their ring time. They are doing 10-minute draws with one another. They haven't really, except for one weird match, which we'll talk about. But the thing where they weren't even themselves, but we'll get to all that. This is just all about reps and ring time for these guys, and they are working their way through the series of draws. They aren't even teaming with anybody else. You know how Kato and Murashima have now gotten to the point where they're in 6-man tags and tag teams with other main roster guys. These guys aren't there yet. What strikes me about these two, it's very early days.
Yes.
I think there's a lot here, though, because both of these guys have terrific facial expressions when they wrestle. They both have terrific fire. They both actually cut pretty good promos. Like in all 3 of those things, I think they're ahead of Murashima and Kato already. I think they're already better at the promos, Yasuda especially. And these two seem to really get over the idea that they aren't just rivals trying to get a leg up on one each other, but they actually have a problem with each other and they really want to beat each other badly. And you can see it in their matches. I just think it's a long way to go, but and Murashima and Kato could improve greatly. We see it all the time with the young lions and all that, but I think these two are ahead of where Kato and Murashima were at this point. And I know it's only a few matches, but they're showing some real progress.
Yeah, you know, I like what I saw from these guys. I think you saw a lot more than I did, in all honesty, from them. But I think the pedigree from what they are teaching and who they're teaching at the school has sharply increased. Like, they're getting very picky about the guys that they're putting out there. And the guys are looking polished and ready, even at the basic level. You know, it's like, this feels like best of the class. And they are going out there and showing, making their teachers proud.
I still feel like Kato and Murashima, my one issue with them, and it's really only one issue, is that they both look a little deer in the headlights-y sometimes. Especially even just coming to the ring. They just look like they have butterflies. They just don't look like they're ready to go out there and compete. You know, they all have that look like, I hope I don't screw up and have to do squats the rest of my life. And that's still the look they have. Whereas I think these two kind of look like they're coming out there and I'm going to kill this guy, you know? So I appreciate, and that all could come. That poise comes. We've been talking about the history of Tanahashi week after week. It wasn't there immediately with him. You know, it was not there immediately with him. So we
don't know which one of these guys is going to be the next Tanahashi of like the 15 or so like new people that have come along in the last like 2 years. Any one of them could be it, and even in the situation. So are you saying that these two were the goons in the Power Rangers match?
Well, yes, and we're going to get to that match. That's been confirmed, and I don't know what to make of that one, but we'll talk about it when we get to that show, because there's a whole.
There was a Power Rangers match, and I could have been knocked over with a feather.
There was indeed. So after this one, by the way, we had Rita from Dragon's Gate teaming with Shoma Kato, and they wrestled Callum Newman and Francesco Akira. Nothing much important about this one, except Rita was a lot of fun. He had a lot of energy, and he mostly tormented Akira the whole match, and which I appreciate. Anyway, that ended up being a course of victory for United Empire. They beat Kato in that one. But yeah, Riita got a little bit of Dragon's Gate time in on a New Japan show, and I was happy to see him.
What do you think about babyface Akira? Clean
You know,
shaven.
it's working for me. I think it somehow makes him look even younger than he already looked, and he looked pretty dang young to begin with. But this tour
he's got pure babyface energy about him right now.
He does. And the other thing about this, the results, the way these matches are being booked, the way they're being even positioned, he was in a singles match. Yes, it was against Taka Michinoku, right? But you don't do a lot of singles matches on undercards in New Japan. They're trying to tell us something with Akira, and I think that something is that they're taking this guy very seriously as a junior going forward.
You think it's DOUKI and Akira in January?
Wouldn't break my heart. I'm not sure DOUKI gets there. I'm not sure Akira gets there with the title. There's a lot that can happen between now and then, but they do seem to be signaling that they're taking Akira very seriously and they want the fans to take him seriously. We're seeing this guy win a lot.
It could be Desperado coming back and challenging for it, but I feel like the two stars shining bright right now are Akira and DOUKI.
Yes.
In the junior heavyweight division, and might be early, but it feels like that might be the room read, or at least some point on the way, even if it's not at Wrestle Kingdom. But
yeah, keep in mind this could be a King of Pro Wrestling match too, before we even get to that point.
Well, no. Could it?
Good.
Maybe. Yeah. Are we for sure that Kanemaru and
no, we don't know when that match. 29th? We don't know when that match is coming, but there's still things that could happen before then. It might not be there. I'm just saying that there are stops along the way for the junior heavyweight title.
Yes.
Yeah. Nothing's been announced in that direction though. And then we had Ryusuke Taguchi and Murashima against Jeff Cobb and Harai. That was just a basic victory for UE, right? Yeah, basic murder. Yeah. Pretty much. And then we had House of Torture. So let's talk about House of Torture here. In this match, it was Ren Narita and Sho against Shota Umino and Jado. Didn't matter which match House of Torture was in, whether it was a regular tag, one of the multi-person tags, a lot of 8-man tags and such on this tour. House of Torture went over, I think, every single time. Like, didn't lose a match in the build-up here. So they are really trying to reestablish House of Torture as a pain in the necks. They are cheating and everything. I mean, they're hitting Jado and Honma with the push-up bar and with the whiskey in the face from Kanemaru. But all of this is in service of building up House of Torture for several things. We know that the idea is, we don't know how bad Narita might be hurt, but Narita was going to go after the TV title. We'll get to that after the main event. We know that Kanemaru is chasing the junior title. It looks like there is a bit of a resurgence for House of Torture as they move toward this clash between Evil and Tanahashi over the presidency or whatever they're going to do with that, Jeremy. But we're in the warming up and heating up period for House of Torture.
Can't wait.
What they did, you know what they didn't do all week though? Ref bump and 900 run-ins.
There was definitely a lot of garroting, though. The garrote, the thing that Dick Togo has with the wire. That thing came out. That thing came out a couple of times. I don't know. I feel like they have to rehabilitate House of Torture in order to have a big loss in January. I think they're going to run wild for the next couple of weeks. I don't feel good about the guys, Tanahashi, Oleg, and Ishii, and their Toru Yano, sorry, and their with their never openweight titles, never 6-man titles. Sorry, I am a jumble right now. I don't feel good about their chances this weekend. I really don't. I feel like they're trying to move the House of Torture on the upswing. Was Ren Narita supposed to be in the 6-man for the titles? Was he one of them?
I think so. I'd have to double check that going back as to who that was.
So we would have Sho, Evil, and
that might have been Yujiro in there. I think it might have been Yujiro, Evil, and Sho.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure he was part of that, but either way, he looks like he's out of it for now. But and Dunstan, good to see you, Dunstan, and Colin, glad you're here. He says Shota needs a change. He's been feuding with House of Torture for a year. Yeah, just about, right? Because we're coming up on a year. It was after the turn at World Tag League, so that, I guess that was in December. But I get your point.
This is where they joined up and started tagging after the G1 was about this time.
Yeah, so you can make a case that the angle really began there. So yeah, it has been a long time, but I think this one's going to go all the way to January. I don't really see them getting away from one another until then.
January is President's Day, my man. You know, Takahashi and Evil at Wrestle
Nicely
Kingdom.
Nicely done. So yeah, but House Torture getting all the heat back now. And then next we had the Mad Bastards, Gabe Kidd and Jake Lee. They defeated Honma and Ishii. And Jake and Gabe were basically in the process of being put over to establish a new heel tag team in New Japan until Lee's injury, which happened later on in Sendai. And it looked also like they were starting to build towards something with Lee and Ishii, because it didn't happen in this match. It happened in another one, but I'll go ahead and cover it now. So this is all within the frame of Road to Destruction.
That was something when he did this thing.
He took Honma and gave him Ishii's brainbuster right in front of Ishii. And of course, Gabe Kidd's holding his waist and keeping him from breaking up the pin. But he gives Ishii's move to Honma and beats him with it and stares down Ishii. They end up brawling after matches after that. And it just seemed like they were headed directly toward Jake Lee and Tomohiro Ishii. And I'd imagine that would be Ishii probably putting him over to really establish him.
Sure.
But what ended up happening, it was actually in a 6-man match in Sendai. Jake Lee, David Finlay, and Gabe Kidd against Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto, and Tomohiro Ishii. So you had the Chaos group against them.
We're doing it right now.
Let's just do it now, and then we can just go over this matches. The Lee was holding Yoshihashi. Lee was outside of the ring. Finlay was the legal man. So he's holding Yoshihashi over the ropes. Just got him, his arms pinned behind him. Finlay charges in. Yoshihashi ducks. The classic tag team wrestling heel thing where the babyface ducks and the heels hit each other. It's been done a zillion times.
Nothing happening.
Lee falls off the apron and grabs his knee immediately. Now, he grabbed his knee. Now, the press release thing on the website said it was a foot injury, but all that stuff's connected, right? So anyway, he grabs his leg, goes down, stays down. And the rest of the way, the match doesn't fall apart, but it's awkward after that. And you see
it fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, they still wrestled and they still kept things going. But here's what happened.
I think Gabe Kidd got hurt too.
Well, I thought so too, but I don't know. I think there was a lot of confusion here because the young lions outside are tending to Lee, and you can see Ghetto over there kind of checking on him, but the cameras make a point of not showing Jake Lee after this. They absolutely make a point because there's all kinds of times when that camera would normally pan over to catch that side of the ring, and it didn't. It stopped right on the ring post, like they were told, stay off of that. And the only reason I know that Ghetto was over there checking on him was because there were a couple of shots where in the background you would see their heads sticking up over the ring where Lee had been laying. And
Finlay and Ghetto are talking to each other in front of where Lee is down.
Yes, yeah, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. The awkwardness came, they kept the match going, but Gabe Kidd took what looked like a pretty innocuous belly to back suplex, and he just grabbed the back of his neck and moved kind of gingerly for a little while after that. Now, I don't know if that was because he was slowing down to listen to hear instructions from the referee or from Goto or whatever, but he wasn't moving quite normally. And then Goto just gave him a pretty normal looking suplex-ish, brainbuster, I guess you could call it. And you know how brainbuster, when I was growing up, brainbuster was you drop straight down on your head. And in Japan, it seems like just a vertical suplex is brainbuster. But
it's very not normal the Ishii brainbuster. It was more like a suplex brainbuster.
Like a tenzon brainbuster. Yeah. And he just covered him, and Kidd just didn't kick out.
At all.
Just didn't. And Goto looked surprised.
Was confused.
Goto looked shocked. Yoshihashi looked shocked on the outside. And even Ishii came in the ring, and you saw him just hold up 3 fingers like, 3?
Yeah.
And Goto held up 3. He was like, yep, 3. Referee had no choice whatsoever. And it was a very awkward moment. You even saw Ghetto holding up 3 fingers like that. That was it. So something went sideways.
The match absolutely fell apart. but due to like the professionalism, you almost couldn't tell. You know what I mean? It was just like they hit the guy that was hurt. They just kept going with the match. And had Gabe Kidd been able to get through the match and not get, concussed, neck damage, God, I hope he's fine.
Well,
like
he popped right back up afterwards and was fighting with everybody all over the ringside area afterwards. And
it might have just been a stinger and then he felt fine. But I feel like the injury was legitimate. He should have kicked out of that. He should have kicked out of that pinfall. That was absolutely like clear as day that everyone thought he was going to, including Goto and including the referee. But when he didn't flinch, the referee just finished it.
Yeah. Well, he had to.
Absolutely. It was what you have to do. But it did not seem like it went according to plan at all.
No, certainly not. And the other thing, I have had moments where I have kind of done a flat back landing, way back. We're talking like 20 some years ago. And it almost feels like you have whiplash, this little bolt, like in the bolt of pain in the back of your skull. And it kind of freezes you up. It's almost like getting a liver shot in boxing or something like that, where your body kind of seizes up. And then it just kind of stops. It's like when your body kind of takes stock and inventory and realizes, okay, we're not as hurt as we thought we might have been. And I wonder if it was something like that. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. But he was moving strangely for a little while. And then afterwards, though, they improvised and got into a big brawl where it was Yoshihashi and Finlay fighting on the opposite side of the arena from where Lee was. And then, Ishii tangling with Kidd and Goto over there with him as well, fighting it out ringside. Meanwhile, Jake Lee was being stretchered out. So you never saw him go out. They didn't really talk about it. It was only on Japanese commentary at this stage, so I don't know if they talked about it, but it was a weird moment, and hopefully Jake Lee is all right. I hate to see anybody get injured, but we'll have to see how this turns out. And Dunstan mentions that Gabe versus Ishii could be a Tokyo Dome matchup, and that's very possible.
I thought it might have been a Royal Quest matchup at this point for the strong title.
Who knows? But the whole idea is this all might have to get reshuffled now if Lee is out for a significant amount of time, and that could affect World Tag League, because there's very little doubt in my mind that Kidd and Lee were going to be in World Tag League. And as we mentioned, we don't have a ton of tag teams laying around New Japan, so we can't really afford to lose anymore. Hopefully, it's a short-term thing.
Yeah, I'm wishing the best for both of those guys. Losing one or even two guys from Bullet Club right now would be a huge impact to like the landscape of New Japan.
Yeah. And Dunstan says Luke and Ishii may be at Royal Quest. Yeah, maybe.
Do that one again. Do another walk back of that one. Sure.
Yeah, I mean they could. Yeah, they could do a rematch.
You might be talking about the viability of return matches in a second.
We probably will be. Douki and Taka Michinoku against Ishimori and Geto after that one. And these were previews for the junior heavyweight thing. They pretty much went back and forth. Sometimes Bullet Club got the win. Sometimes Five Guys got the win. Now, the other side of the House of Torture feud was this one here. Tanahashi, Bolton, and Yano teaming with Tiger Mask to face Evil, Yujiro, Kanemaru, and Dick Togo. There was a version of this each night where mostly the partner of the six-man tag champs got beat by House of Torture through cheating and things. But this was all about getting over House of Torture. And what I liked here, Jeremy, I thought this was clever. Tanahashi said, well, we don't want to be losing every night. What we are seeing is every single one of the House of Torture tricks before the big title match, and we're going to learn all their tricks before we get there. And I thought that was an interesting way to put a spin on a losing streak, because we're just learning all their tricks before the match that actually counts.
That actually does not fill me with much confidence either.
Yeah. And then we had Kosei Fujita having a strong tour. I mean, that guy's just so good. And teaming with Zack Sabre Jr., they defeated Great Khan and Jacob Austin Young, who I thought looked pretty good in this first go-around with New Japan. Very solid wrestler. And this was all about Zack tying up Jason Austin Young for a submission. Afterwards, I thought this was interesting. Okan said that when he faces Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP title, because, of course, he's going to beat Naito, right? He wants it to be a submission match. So
okay,
don't think that's going to happen. So my guess is that Naito's going to beat him
one day
anyway, but maybe someday. But yeah, that was the storyline there. So the Okan and Sabre rivalry continues on as they kind of eye each other from the side, leading up to the big title match.
Brad Ryder on the Discord let me know that Jacob Austin Young came up with Royce Isaacs and Jor-El Nelson on the West Coast wrestling scene. So he has a lot of ties to New Japan already. So I think that was really interesting.
I thought he did well.
Yeah.
And then we had the main event. This was the 20th anniversary match, and it was Yamato, Bushi, and Shingo Takagi against Tetsuya Naito, Yota Tsuji, and Hiromu Takahashi. So this was really good match. They just battled it out to a 30-minute draw. They teased a little bit of dissension with Yamato and Shingo based off their past history of both facing each other and teaming with each other. But it was all in good fun. Really excellent wrestling match. And they just fought all the way to a draw. And I really felt like these guys, yes, Naito kept a shirt on, all that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of effort put into this match. This was one of these things where they weren't going to let anybody else in the match outshine them. I thought everybody worked hard. It was fun to see Yamato in a New Japan ring, and he took the opportunity to really look good. And I thought this was just a terrific trios tag. I love that it went to a draw and that everybody shook hands afterwards. I thought it was just what it ought to be.
Yeah, in all honesty, I was just really appreciative that everyone in this match put in the effort because it was Shingo's 20th anniversary. It shows the respect that they had for him. You didn't have to, but they still did, and it's cool, man. I like that everyone likes Shingo.
So afterwards, there was a video package put up on the screen with various top guys wishing Shingo congratulations, wishing him well on 20 years. They included Animal Hamaguchi, who was the trainer of Shingo, and some for Tetsuya Naito as well. Tatsumi Fujinami was in it. Keiji Muto, Atsushi Onita. There was a voice actor that I'm not familiar with, but seemed to get a big reaction from the crowd there. So it must have been a voice actor for a major character there that everybody knew. And Junichiro Tenryu as well. That the video package also included some really cool still photos of Naito and Shingo all the way back in the day there in the Animal Hamaguchi gym before Naito had the hair. He just had his real short hair. I almost didn't recognize him. I've seen him forever with the kind of the bushy hairdo, and it's gone dark. Have you noticed that? This is the least
I was ready for that, man. I laughed my ass off on the 11th when I saw that he had gone to the salon in between shows and darkened his hair like several shades.
Yeah,
because he knew he was going to be having some big matches coming up.
Yeah,
like you can look at the video inset and see his like overlay of his match card, and you'll just see like super light hair Naito, and he went all the way until the 4th night of this tour, and he comes out for his match, and I thought my TV was screwed up. I'm like, what the hell? Like, and then it's like, oh, he tried to de-age himself by about 10 years right now.
a little bit. But yeah, he has the dark hair back on that. So that was the night in Yamanashi. And then after that, they had to hightail it back over to Tokyo because they had 2 straight days at Korakuen Hall. So attendance wasn't fantastic here, Jeremy. 1,300 on the first night, not quite full, and only 1,100 on the second night. So that's I don't want to start going into like worrying signs, but my goodness, you have a title match in the main event and not even 1,200 in Korakuen. There's still work to be done.
Yes, but I do think that a lot of people were aware that, these road shows and they have like 1 or 2 matches that are title or very, very consequential. They weren't the main event guys, like up and down the card. These are title matches, and you haven't established Yota and Jeff Cobb. You haven't established HENARE. You have somewhat established Hiromu, but like him main event against HENARE is, you're asking a lot, but it still delivered. But it was basically a first time main event for a show. And then you had DOUKI with his first junior heavyweight title defense. These are reasonable to be like building block matches. I think that there's definitely a sense that people would have who decided to skip on these matches because of these cards might have had a regret, and they'll come back around the next time because the effort was put in. Those main events were, We could argue about which one of those main events was better than the other ones, because each one of them had something to it that was just like, oh, I love this for this reason. But I get the attendance. It's right after the G1. You have the events on the 19th and then the 14th, or the 14th. And it's just I think everyone is aware that like this isn't the climax of like the current time frame. You know, like we're building to something a little bit later on.
So we had a few notes from the undercard. We've already mentioned a lot of the overarching themes, so we're not going to go over match by match here. I did want to mention again, Jason Austin Young looked good here in a match with United Empire. And what gets lost in the shuffle here, we've talked about World Tag League a bunch. There's Junior Tag League coming as well. Do you see Jacob Austin Young or TJP as Akira's partner in that tournament?
I think I see TJP.
So do you see Jacob Austin Young getting a spot in there?
No.
Not even he and Newman?
I don't think Newman's a junior.
Well, he can be if they want him to
be.
It's not like they have public weigh-ins.
I guess he could do Jacob and Akira. Sure, why not?
I don't know. I was just thinking.
I mean,
you bring the guy in now for a reason, right? I mean, it's, you know.
I think they just have a tradition of bringing a guy in right after the G1. Just like the Unit Empire does.
Speaking of which, Zack Sabre Jr. announced that we are getting a new member of TMDK in Kobe. He won't say who yet.
Who it is?
Do you think you know?
I think so.
Who do you got?
Ryohei Oiwa?
I'd take that. I still am hoping that they're going to do something a little bit fresher with Oiwa in there, but the timing of that does feel pretty on point.
I think with the streak of rebelliousness that he had in Noah, I think that there's a pivot and like a lateral move. And I think if Zack Sabre Jr. is going to become the final boss of New Japan, there has to be a guy in TMDK at the heavyweight level as a singles that can compete and win or lose and leave it a little more ambiguous rather than Zack Sabre Jr., who is now probably going to be one of the most protected guys in the entire promotion.
So you think he needs a Shingo to his Naito?
I think so.
Oh, could be. I'm still kind of hoping that we get another new faction out of some of this stuff. I guess that's really what I'm.
That's not really like you can add one guy to TMDK and they're fine, you know. Sure. And there's a number of other, like we talked about it last week about how top heavy LIJ, and we had Esteban from the fan club talking to us like they're just not going to break up LIJ, or
no,
like
they aren't. Which isn't what I was talking about. Which isn't what I was saying they should do. I'm saying they have had one member of LIJ leave several times, and the band just keeps playing on. They could still do that, and that I was never saying you should break up LIJ. That'd be idiotic. But you can do things like that and bring in
guys go elsewhere, and it doesn't really matter. Like Naito has to stay probably, but somebody is going to succeed Naito, and then there's going to be somebody who doesn't. And that's probably going to leave a nose out of joint, and they're going to want to do something else. That can happen at any point. That was the whole overarching mentality that I had, is that there's only going to be one heir to the throne.
Yeah. Well, either way, whatever they do with it, I'm hoping, again, that they shake things up a little bit when it comes to the factions. But the timing of this would make a lot of sense for it to be Oiwa as well. Oiwa's a hell of a wrestler, and teaming up with Zack, that's not or being the enforcer for Zack, nothing wrong with that either. We also had, let's see what else we had here. We already talked about the Mad Bastards, and we talked about the...
All the same stuff.
House of Torture. Yeah, pretty much was. And Zack Sabre tapped out Bushi in that match. So, yeah, this was, like I said, pretty perfunctory stuff here at Korakuen Hall. And maybe we're getting to the real meat of why the thing didn't sell out. Exactly like you said. It's a lot of the same stuff.
Ishii and the Mad Bastards was good. This match right here with Shingo and Hiromu versus HENARE and Akira was also really, really good. There were great matches on the card and worth going out of your way. But it's not seek out and watch these matches. This is purely like, I want to watch some good wrestling and I have some time. That's the level that we're working with right now.
Now, the one you should see is the World Television title match that headlined this show, Jeff Cobb and Yota Tsuji. So This one was really, really exciting. Tsuji got off to a fast start. Cobb was more deliberate on his offense, even saying out loud to Tsuji a couple of times, "You have to beat me," emphasizing the idea that he can retain the title with a draw at the 15-minute time limit.
Advantage, my friend.
And Tsuji had some nice feats of strength in this match as well. It wasn't just Cobb. A couple of the highlights, though, a Marlowe crash from Tsuji was countered into a spin cycle. He simply caught Yota Tsuji in the air, out of midair, and turned it into a spin cycle. That was very cool. Cobb also did the Marlowe crash himself.
Beast moves in this. Like, that's what I love about these Jeff Cobb matches. If they are just literally two big guys heavyweight matching each other. I don't, there's no other way to put it. They're big boys going at it.
Cobb hit the F5000 with about 10 seconds left, and they were too beat up to make a cover, though, and it went to a draw. This was so much fun, and I think they're ready to move on from it. I was wondering, like, the one thing about a time limit draw is your first instinct is, well, then you have to do it again, but not necessarily, because, although they might have to. Anyway, we'll get to that, because Jeff Cobb and Tsuji were both in the ring, and Ren Narita comes charging in and blasts Jeff Cobb, and knocks him silly, knocks Tsuji silly, and said he wants the next shot at the television title. So barring a long-term injury from Narita, whatever's going on with his arm right there, that would be the next challenger for Jeff Cobb for the world television title. This was terrific. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was only 15, and then I absolutely could have had a longer one if they wanted to do something that doesn't involve the world television title. These two work really well together. Could be a fun rivalry for the future to go back to at some point. I'd love to see it again. These two are fabulous.
The Chaos Goblin may not wreak some havoc, but I 100% enjoyed everything about this match. Did you know that the 15-minute time limit was legit? Their timing was that good? Because sure. I went back and checked the time cues from when the match started and when the match ended, and it was exactly a 15-minute point. And I was like,
they usually are in New Japan. They don't usually, I'm not going to say never. They don't usually gimmick those.
Right. Not even a few seconds, though. This was a bullseye, and I want to give those guys a shout out when they pull that off on a 15-minute.
In post-match comments afterwards, DOUKI was talking after his match, and he said he wants to face Darby Allin at Wrestle Dynasty. Named him right off the bat. He also had a list of AEW guys he'd like to face. Unfortunately, two of them were the Lucha Brothers. So I don't think we're going to get that one. But he says there's one more, but he's not ready to name that person yet. Okay, I'm being coy about that. DOUKI versus Darby Allin at Wrestle Dynasty. I'd sign me up for that. I'd love to see that one.
I hope it would happen. I feel like Tony Khan would think that DOUKI is not a big enough star.
Yeah, okay. Remember, Wrestle Dynasty?
Just like Tony Khan's perception of New Japan is just one of the most curious things to me. Just his valuations of who and what. And like, if he can prove to me that he has paid attention to more than 2018 New Japan for the most part, I would be so impressed.
And he pays attention to his own company. Yeah. September 9th at Korakuen Hall. This was, again, so we move on to the next night, second night. This has had attendance of about 1,200 or so, 1,190. So rough crowd there on a Tuesday. But the opening match. So, okay. So we found out that El Desperado is out with a knee injury, of course, and he didn't wrestle here, but he is part of a stage show that is going into a limited run next week in Tokyo Dome City at a theater out there. And I guess it's based on a manga. But it's
Power Rangers.
It's not literally the Power Rangers. It's
a version of the Power Rangers. They change iterations.
They change
iterations of the Power. I thought it was a real thing.
Yeah, I think it's called Loser Ranger or something like that. So, anyway, we had Nagai and Yasuda dressed up in black masks and black tights, making weird noises, like I guess they're supposed to be characters from this thing. And then wrestling Ryusuke Taguchi and Yuji Nagata, who had to be wondering what in the hell he's doing in this match. But they had characters from the stage show out there at ringside, including Desperado in a silly costume. And what can you say? Taguchi and Nagata got through it and just guided the Young Lions through this weird match. But this was a commercial. It was a commercial for the stage show.
It was a paid advertisement for the show. afterwards in the backstage segment, like Taguchi's trying to put it over, and Yuji Nagata's like, "Sounds like a great show. You should all check it out. Okay, bye."
Yeah. Everybody burn this video. If you ever see it anywhere, just burn it.
It made me laugh because I have a
Poor Nagata.
deep-seated appreciation for the Power Rangers growing back from when I was a kid. So I didn't hate it. I was like, oh, cool. And I got GOG subs that love the Power Rangers. It was fine for me, but I totally see why it was long in the tooth for most New Japan fans.
This is one that I'm going to show myself here on this one. I have never seen an episode of the Power Rangers in my life, so I have no idea what's going on with this stuff.
I am pretty sure this was a Power Rangers merchandise. There's no parody to this. I think it's all.
I don't know.
I think real. Like, you could translate it because they do Cosmic Rangers, they do Galaxy Rangers. Loser Rangers would not shock me if it was a real thing.
Okay, I'm looking this up.
Do it.
I'm doing it right now. Here we go. Go Loser Rangers. Go Loser Ranger. Yeah, that is it right here. It's a weekly shonen. There, yeah, it's chapters collection. It's been an anime. This does not look like it is part of the Power Ranger universe, but is in fact part of the what do they call this? This is a whole genre, right? There's a Sentai. Yeah, it's a whole it's a Sentai type of thing. So
okay,
it does not look like it is official there, but boy, it's I hope they have good lawyers. I hope they have good lawyers. It looks an awful lot like it. Boy. Anyway, but yeah, poor Yuji Nagata couldn't get away from this fast enough. I was just training with the Japanese Olympic wrestling team. What the hell am I doing here? What else do we have from this show here? Anything else strike you about this one, Jeremy, before we move on?
See, I'm wrapping through the year. No, I mean, this is fine.
Somewhere in the Ren Narita and Sho versus Jado Shota Umino match, Narita hurt his arm, and I'll be damned if I can see it where, but he did, and was pulled off subsequent shows. So if you can find it at home, go right ahead and let me know where you think it happened, because I can't. I didn't see it.
No idea where it happened. Like I went back and I saw that one, and I saw the Jake Lee one. I was like, oh, I know where that one is, and then I couldn't figure out where Red Narita got hurt. Couldn't figure it out.
I couldn't see it either. I'm sorry he did, though. I mean, I don't want him to get hurt. I want him to be fine, and hopefully he can recover quickly. So, but the main event of this one, like so, the rest of it were these preview tags that we've been talking about already. The never open weight title match was the main event, and man, this was quite. I think this was the best match of the week. This was HENARE versus Hiromu Takahashi. It went 25 minutes. It was so good. It was on paper classic power versus speed, but at times Hiromu's story was that he was going to show his fighting spirit, because that's all that's what HENARE is all about, like bringing out people's tamashe, that manai, the fighting spirit, right? And this time he slugged it out with HENARE, and they worked this Hiromu-chan bomber, right? So, you know, the pumping bomber is a big lariat for Shingo Takagi. Hiromu does the Hiromu-chan bomber, and they worked this hold of this move, I guess it is, throughout this entire match brilliantly, because at first he throws it at HENARE, who's so much bigger than him, and it's like he's clotheslined a brick wall. Nothing happens. Just barely acknowledges it. As the move goes on, he keeps trying it, and he keeps trying it, and each time he does slightly more damage with it as HENARE starts to wear down. And in the end, he managed to hit this Hiromu-chan bomber coming off the ropes. HENARE bumped, and it got a huge pop out of the crowd finally for all the work they did putting into that move. I was really happy for him that they got that the crowd got it, understood what they were doing. Of course they did. I mean, the crowds there are very smart. But I thought that was very well worked, Jeremy. They really fired up to that. And then there was a chop and kick exchange where Hiromu was chopping HENARE, and HENARE was kicking the living crap out of Hiromu's chest. That was a really strong moment in the match. I mean, those two guys really laid into each other in a very safe way. If you look where they were hitting each other, it was exactly how you would want to do that. The William Regal thing, Jeremy, hit very hard in very safe places, right? They were doing it perfectly.
They were doing a great job. This is one of the big man, little man matches that you can do in a ton of different ways, but I feel like they found a fresh way to do it. Just whether it was because Hiromu hasn't really had the opportunity to do this. He had just been waiting to give it up. HENARE is an excellent bully. You know what I mean? Like, he is an excellent you're not going to stop me. You're not going to stop me. And then slowly getting worn down until the point that you feel like he has a lot of vulnerability. It's okay that Hiromu didn't win this match, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I feel like
he hit the time bomb for a 2 count. He ended up succumbing to the Streets of Rage. And my note here was that it was talking about Hiromu in character. The match was a complete success, but I said from the Hiromu character thing, because they did this whole video package beforehand where Hiromu is absolutely angling to face Naito in a big match, and he thinks that the never Openweight title is the thing that'll draw it out, right? And that's why he wanted to get the win on HENARE. It's why he wants to beat HENARE and take this title, because he wants that big match with Naito. And, never Openweight champion versus the heavyweight champion, this whole thing. I wrote, this was a beautiful failure for that character, because what I mean by that is the character has now given his intent. We know what he wants. And he's always kind of said it, but now it seems like he's really laser focused on it, and he's had a setback now. And I am legitimately curious to see what Hiromu does going forward to try to get back to his goal. I'm genuinely curious. They got me on this one. I'm in. So I want to see where this beautiful failure takes him, because it was probably the best match of HENARE's entire career. And Naito did something he virtually never does, which is he jumped right in the ring and helped Hiromu to the back. That's not something he usually does in LIJ matches. He's not usually there at ringside, and he doesn't usually help guys out, but he was right in there with Shingo. And then as they're leaving, HENARE grabs Shingo, holds the belt up, and basically names Shingo as his next challenger. So we have that to look forward to next.
So this was the night that Naito colored his hair and darkened it. And after his match, he immediately, he had the semi-main. They finished their match, and he immediately went and sat down and commentary and did Japanese commentary for this entire match. And I saw that colored hair, and I saw this commentary, and I saw he was doing it for Hiromu. Like, oh, it's on for Wrestle Kingdom. They want the footage. They want Naito coming to his age on a VTR package, building up. They need the footage, and they were setting up footage for a longer story that they're going to have a video package for. And this is going to be something. I think that they have a plan. I don't think Dunstan suggests that they don't pull a Vince and hand Hiromu the Naito match. I don't think that that's what they have in mind at all. I think there's a Road to Wrestle Kingdom story going on right now.
Oh, yeah. I think there are chapters, plural, going with this one ahead of us that we can watch. Yeah, I think so, too. And I want to mention one of Dunstan's questions from earlier here. He said maybe it's because we've had a ton of rematches this year, but are either of you disappointed that Shingo and HENARE are going to have another match after 2 months? Absolutely not. These matches are always great. They elevated the King of Pro Wrestling title against one another. They had a hell of a match there. I don't mind rematches. There has gotten to be this culture, and it really comes from AEW, of, well, rematches are bad because we've already seen it, man. And just there is what happened to a rivalry. I know AEW and its little booking things where you do something once and then you have to wait 10 months to do it again and all that. How's that going for them, by the way? What, they get about 2,000 people at a Dynamite? The point is, almost every great rivalry in wrestling had multiple rematches over and over again. Were people bitching because Kenny Omega and Okada were going to wrestle again? AEW fans probably would. You're like, oh, geez, we've seen this. It was one of the best matches in history. Seen it. Knock it off. If it's a good match, what's wrong with doing it again? Part of being a pro wrestler is figuring out how to work the same opponent and do something different. Tell a slightly different story. These guys are professionals. Shingo's one of the best in the last 20 years, as we figured out. So this whole idea is, oh, geez, I don't know. We've already seen him wrestle. What you're just going to have him wrestle the other 30 guys in the company and then not have anything to do? The rematches, when they're between two really good wrestlers, are terrific. I wonder if these people would be like, oh, geez, the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. I'd hate to see that again. Good grief. And oh, man, what? Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair again? Ric Flair and Rick Steamboat? Geez, seen it. I just yeah, Jesus Christ. I know there's 600 people sitting around catering at AEW, so you can have them wrestle different people once a week for 17 years. They never see each other again. But how about some storytelling where guys circle each other, find ways to beat each other, find ways to counter each other in match after match? That's what good rematches are. That's good pro wrestling. Stop with this, I know that Dunson's not saying all the stuff I said, but I see this stuff. I see these arguments being made on the internet that they shouldn't do rematches. Rematches are lame and all this. I'm like, get over it. Get over it. When you have two people that know how to do it, it's some of the best stuff out there. It's a rivalry. That's one of the beautiful things about wrestling. So Henare could have gone against Taichi. That would be better than Shingo? No. Shingo and Henare is going to be a better match. And he says, I think Henare should have new rivals, not just go back so soon to Shingo. Well, they have time to do all that. It's a good match. You're going to get a good match. Hey.
I am so happy that you have a podcast that you were able to get that out.
I feel much better now. But yeah,
Honestly, in my mind, I never had an issue with them going back to Shingo and Henare. I validate people being bored with the same matchups and wondering like what the deal is with going back to the same thing and not picking out new guys. A lot of these guys are injured. A lot of them aren't in the right place to be doing some of these like heavy hitting matchups. They're not going to do Henare versus Jeff Cobb, which would be something that people want to see. Like there's not a whole lot of talent that is freed up in the middle of this roster right now for Henare to do anything other than revisit another United Empire versus LIJ feud, because they have a reason that they're doing this right now through the Great Okan. I think the 29th is going to be a big show, and I think they're stacking it for a reason, and they're trying to get people to make sure that they're checking out this show. Like something's up with this show. I don't know how to put it, but there's something about the way that they are trying to coalesce everything to happen on this show at the end of the month that I cannot quite parse, but I have the vibe.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I just feel like some of the best rivalries, they're rivalries because they meet multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
End of story. Like that's the greatest stuff are the best rivalries and feuds. You have to face each other multiple times to get that stuff. So, Anyway, so there you go. That was the show from Korakuen Hall. Then we moved over to Sendai at the Sun Plaza. This time the attendance was a little better, Jeremy. As odd as that is, it's about the same crowd as Korakuen Hall, about 1,100 people, 1,200 people. But I was looking back at past events at the Sun Plaza there, and if you go over 1,000, you're doing pretty well. The last time a New Japan show, or any show for that matter, did over 2,000, it was a big Dragon's Gate show, one. And another one, it was both the World Tag League and Junior Tag League. You remember they did both tournaments at once a few years ago? They did the double final.
They alternated them? Yeah.
So that was... that one drew better than this one, but other than that, this is a good crowd for Sendai anyway, which is not the biggest town for New Japan, but they go regularly, service fans there. So,
quick question before we get into this match, before we get into this show, the main event for the last two nights, which one did you like better? Between Jeff Cobb and Yota Tsuji and Hiromu and Henare, which one did you like better? I thought
Hiromu and Henare was the best match of the whole week.
Okay. Cool.
So I go with that one, even over the main event of here in Sendai, which was also excellent. So
got it. Cool.
Yep. Started with another draw, and then we had we had Francesco Akira over Taka Michinoku. You know what? Before I get to that, I want to mention Tiger Mask and Honma defeated the Young Lions of Murashima and Kato. Nothing particularly interesting about, except Tiger won with the Tiger Suplex, which is a move he doesn't do very often, and he dedicated that move to Kuniaki Kobayashi, who by this point we found out passed away on the 9th. I don't think the guys knew that when they were wrestling at Korakuen Hall on the 9th. I think they found that out afterwards, from what I heard in post-match comments in Sendai. So I don't think when they wrestled in Korakuen they knew that he had passed away. So Tiger Mask did the Tiger Suplex there as a tribute to Kobayashi.
I wanted to mention that this was around the time in my life where I have completely grown into loving the Tiger Mask theme song, and I bop along to it as I hear it.
It's downright catchy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you go to the Tudo-Okan store, this is different than the New Japan store, but the Tudo-Okan store is that huge store in Japan that's just dedicated to pro wrestling, where they sell things like, you know, ring worn gear and masks and all that. The soundtrack that plays, the music, the house music is it's pro wrestling themes. And so some of it is American stuff, some of it is Japanese themes, and the Tiger Mask theme and the Liger themes, which all sound like anime themes to begin with, are all play over there. And it does put some pep in your step. I'll say that. It does. It absolutely does.
Bippity boppity.
Yes. And then like Honky Tonk Man will come on and you just want to stab yourself in the ear. But Francesco Akira defeated Taka Michinoku in a singles match. Tell you what, Taka Michinoku can still wrestle. I know he's there to put people over. That guy can still absolutely go.
This was about the time where I was explaining to my wife Savannah, who was watching the show with me, like, yeah, so this guy's part of just 5 guys, but right now there's only just 4 guys. But they haven't renamed themselves just 4 guys. Despite there only being just 4 guys, they're still just 5 guys. But there's only 4 guys right now. You got that? And she's like, I think so.
And so, what was it, Girls 5 Eva? That show on Peacock? That came
she watched it. Like, that was the same thing.
So, okay. So after that, we had a tag team match. Sanada and Taichi against Fujita and Zack Sabre Jr. Now we get to the news portion of the program, because they had a surprise ending to a really good match. Sanada and Zack got into one of their fabulous pin scrambles, and they're 2 of the very best at those pin scrambles. Well, coming out of that, Sanada just grabs hold of him for a deadfall, hits it, and pins Zack Sabre Jr., G1 winner, future challenger to the IWGP title. Surprised the hell out of me. And then I found out why they did it, because Sanada took the microphone, and in pretty darn good English, I might add, Sanada said that, Zack, you beat me in my hometown. Now I want to beat you in yours. And he has challenged Zack for Royal Quest. So the question is, would that be Zack's first title defense just after, if he beats Naito? His first one would be against Sanada. I'll tell you what, it's a match he could win, and it's a match that's always very, very good between the 2 of them. It might be a pretty good choice. And Sanada and Zack headed for London.
So you're saying that Zack Sabre Jr.'s first title defense could be against another former IWGP champion in order to legitimize his title run, and they have that guy.
And one of his best opponents, traditionally. Just somebody he's had phenomenal matches with going back years and years.
It sounds like they're just stepping on the gas to legitimize him and put him in matches against people who've had the title already. Wouldn't be surprised to get him set up with Shingo at some point in the near future, since he had the IWGP title as well. And we kind of see what guys he can get through while he has the title, in order to, like I said, final boss him, because I really do think that there is a sense of making him the top guy, at least for the short run.
Let's go to the question that Dunstan had too. With all these teases of potential world title matches, it seems like New Japan are trying to gauge which match will make the most buzz for Wrestle Kingdom 19. It's an interesting point, but I think Jeremy might be on the road there to saying what they're really trying to do, which was make Zack into a real strong, legit champion and give him a strong champion's resume out of the gate. And he also asked, what would you prefer Wrestle Kingdom 19? Having a young generation main event and solidify a new star, or have a veteran who's been there longer win in the Dome? I think you can do both, because if Naito and Hiromu were there, Zack is, and just saying, we don't know that Zack is going to be the champion, but this is how the tea leaves are reading at the moment. If Zack goes into the Dome as a champion, he needs an opponent. Who would be an interesting opponent for him? Well, there are a lot of guys from the next generation that could be an interesting person to get a title shot. So you could have the top guy, Jin, the top foreign guy over there, defending against a younger generation guy. Zack probably represents not the Tanahashi Naito generation or anything like that, but he certainly isn't a newbie. He's been around for many, many years now, both in New Japan and then just in wrestling as a whole. If Zack took on one of that younger generation, whether it's Tsuji, whether it's, and I'm not saying, you just throw out any of those guys, he could have a phenomenal match with them, either put him over or not. You know, they usually put over a Japanese star, not the foreign star, in the main event of the Dome. Not always, but usually, mostly, heavily in that direction. And he could make that guy, or it could just be the establishment of the new foreign king in that sense. But I think they can do both. I think you can really put a guy in their first Tokyo Dome main event and have a guy like Zach, an established guy, and you have both of them established as top guys going forward into 2025. I use the word established too much in the explanation, but yeah, I think you get my point here, is that you can serve both masters a little bit in that sense.
So there's another wrinkle to all of this. Whoever Zack Sabre Jr. faces, I think he's going to beat, because at the AEW pay-per-view, MJF had a match. And in his match, MJF pulled a Clarky Cat out. And if I could read anything from that says to me that MJF versus Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP title at Wrestle Dynasty the night after Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main event match that they would probably be angling for.
Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to send the fans home with a Japanese star giving the big final farewell, you can come up with something special enough. Maybe Naito and Hiromu is it, where the IWGP title match is second from the top.
I don't even think that Naito and Hiromu are going to have all that much of a special match at Wrestle Dynasty after Wrestle Kingdom.
No, I'm talking about a Kingdom, because they're worried. I'm saying that the New Japan sometimes seems allergic to having a foreign star.
You can have Naito and Hiromu main event that show, no problem.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Pardon me. I may have misspoken when I was talking about which show.
No, I just didn't understand. I was trying to figure out the content. You are all good, my friend.
Thanks.
All right, what else we got here? Oh, here was the match where everybody died.
Yes. This one ended poorly.
This was legitimately. This was the match that has, in 2024 in New Japan Pro Wrestling, this is the worst match that, like, they didn't intend to be bad. You know what I mean? Like, everything went wrong in this match, and if you want to see people try and salvage it and do their best, this is a match in which you should probably study, because it is textbook salvage a disaster.
This is the one, of course, we were talking about earlier with Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi against the War Dogs, Finlay, Kid, and Lee, where Lee got hurt and had to be taken out. And there was a lot of confusion, a lot of improvising going on in there. So we've already talked about that one. But yeah, this is when it happened. Yeah. 10-man tag after that. Naito beat Jacob Austin Young in one of those all skates between LIJ and United Empire. So that was Young. So Young got a win earlier in the tour, and then mostly put people over, as you would expect right there. Just cutting his teeth in New Japan. Worked out fine, though. And then we had the junior heavyweight title match between DOUKI and Taiji Ishimori. And as you would imagine, this was very, very good between these two. DOUKI was working toward the suplex de la Luna, of course, and you had Ishimori working his way to the bone lock, and everyone was just trying to hit their big move. It went 22 minutes, and then finally, basically, it was a fairly straightforward thing. Like, each guy was trying to hit their big thing. Ishimori was trying to capture him in the bone lock. Sometimes he did, and DOUKI would manage to get out of it. DOUKI had about 100 ways to get Ishimori in and out of that suplex de la Luna. And as it came down to the wire, it was DOUKI who finally hit the big move with the bridge, got the pin. Just terrific stuff. He had the just five guys, the rest of the crew, except Uemura, of course, in his corner, and he came through for them in Sendai, which, by the way, Ishimori's hometown. So Ishimori had a little bit more of the crowd than usual, although I think most of it was still for DOUKI. Terrific match. Title retention for DOUKI. And that kind of sends Ishimori back into no man's land a little bit without the championship. And I noticed that he even said afterwards that he needs to do something different to get out of this loop. He acknowledged it as a loop where he gets to the title, he loses the title match, and then he's back down. So I'm hoping that this is a guy who can kind of, in no man's land in Bullet Club, and can break out of it someday. But because he's just a fantastic wrestler. And DOUKI is a terrific champion, really showing a lot of charisma. This was a good match, a good title defense. And afterwards, once the rest of just five guys had left and gone back up the aisle, Yoshinobu Kanemaru came out of the announced desk, came out from the announced desk and attacked DOUKI, laid him out, and declared that he would be the next challenger for the IWGP Championship,
Great.
which feels like just another match that DOUKI can win and further establish his title reign.
I loved this match. I thought Ishimori did a fantastic job in helping legitimize DOUKI's title reign. DOUKI's coming in with a perception issue. Like, for people who aren't following closely, like, who's DOUKI? Like, why is this guy the champion? He doesn't seem like he's the top guy. And then he comes out and he wrestles a match like this, where essentially Ishimori is trying to take him out in every single way, and he will not give up. And he is trying to hit the suplex de la Luna, and he's trying to hit the suplex de la Luna. If he hits the suplex de la Luna, he's got this match. And I'll tell you, that finishing sequence where he went for the suplex de la Luna and Ishimori spun out of it, and then DOUKI converted him back and got him into a pile driver position, flipped him into the wheelbarrow to get him into the suplex de la Luna, then herked him up and pinned him, was absolutely gorgeous.
It was beautiful.
I have said this elsewhere online, but I think the suplex de la Luna is my favorite finisher in wrestling right now.
Oh, nice.
I can't think of one that I like better or that I think is more effective. Maybe like an Ospreay Stormbreaker or Hidden Blade, but I know he can't hit it on everybody, but when you see him do the full extension for the bridging suplex into the pin, God, it looks so good.
Yeah, it does, yeah. And Dunstan's right in line with me on this. He said, petition for Ishimori to leave Bullet Club but join Oiwo when he comes back. Yes, all day, yes. That's a great combination. And has a Noah connection, right? Because Ishimori was in Noah forever, so it's got a little bit of that. By the way, Ishimori, for the way he moves, the way he wrestles, the way he does everything else, the man's 41. He's going to be 42 in February. He wrestles like he's 25. It moves like he's 25. Probably doesn't feel it, because I know when I turned 40, everything started hurting. But the thing is with him, it's just remarkable how good he is, and not just for a 41-year-old, for anybody. He's one of the best junior heavies in the world, but he does not move like he's had a 20-some-year career.
No, he is spry. Definitely. I don't move as fast as he does after 20 years in my career. I'll tell you that much.
You don't move as fast as Taiji Ishimori?
I'm not limber and crisp in my move set, Steven. I can admit when I've been had.
Yeah, I'm a little slower than Hiromu also. I can't quite catch him in the 40-yard dash either. So anyway, upcoming events. Let's go on to this one. So
this is a short show because of the Rambo.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of matches set up. So we have 4 shows this coming week, but only Saturdays will be on NJPW World. The rest of that tour of Hokkaido will be just strictly house shows. The main event, we're going to read off all the matches. Like you said, there's not a lot of them. The main event is the never open weight 6-man tag team championship. Bolton Oleg, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Toru Yano, who is the the tourism ambassador for Hokkaido. So all the pressure on Yano here, against Dick Togo, Yujiro, and Evil. By the way, Ryusuke Taguchi is now an ambassador for his hometown. Also, he was named ambassador for his hometown until 2029. So he will we'll probably be seeing some of that, just like we do for Yano. But anyway, that title match is coming up there on Saturday. Like you said, kind of feels like Evil's run will continue, as House of Torture feels like they're about to take this and just put the good guys behind the 8 ball a little bit further, doesn't it?
Yeah, we only got 5 matches. The Rambo's the second match, and then we got a couple multi-mans.
Kazushi Sakuraba is back from UFC, the Gracie Hunter, the Gracie Killer rather.
Yes.
He's teaming with Yano, so Yano's working twice, and that's against the Young Lions, Nagai and Yasuda, in the first match. And we will also have Ishii, Goto, and Yoshihashi, that Chaos trio, against Kid, Finlay, and Geto, who's substituting for Lee. And then a multi-person match with United Empire and LIJ meeting up again.
Sounds like a blast. And then we will have 2 weeks off until our next New Japan show. We won't have 2 weeks off, but viewing New Japan, there won't be any shows for us to talk about. So we're going to have a fun week in between where we're just, we're going to be talking about the state of New Japan, I suppose.
Yeah, and the website right now lists the rest of the shows for Hokkaido, but only mentions a couple of multi-person matches for each. And then at the bottom, it just says 7 to 8 matches to be determined. So they haven't decided yet totally what they're going to do for the rest of that Hokkaido tour, I guess. So there are going to be some small towns in that one, Jeremy. But this is just a basic fan service here. They like to touch these towns every once in a while and just do small shows in them. And they're probably not going to be the most impressive looking crowds in the world, so maybe don't put them on World there. But you do want to say hi to these fans every once in a while, because they only really go to Sapporo on the Hokkaido, on that island, for any real with any real regularity. So it's good to hit the small towns every once in a while.
So I'm going to give you the floor for the next 20 minutes or so, because you got a couple of things that you have written down about Tanahashi and the recent events that have happened. So I'm going to give that to you, and you just take over, man.
Well, we're gonna pause on the Tanahashi stuff because I want to talk about Kobayashi this week.
Okay.
But I also want to get to a couple of these questions from the folks here before we do.
I haven't looked at any of these questions. What do we got?
Dunstan we've already tackled most of Dunstan's. He has another one here, a Stardom question though. Do you think Stardom has no interest in being an international promotion like New Japan and extend their reach, or stand strictly in Japan? I think right now Stardom seems to be focusing on its rivalry with Marigold and holding on to what they've got in Japan. Now Bushiroad is the one that has the parent company, seems to be using some Stardom talent on their shows here in the United States. And you're seeing some like Mina Sharkawa doing well with Ring of Honor and AEW, and Anna Jay coming over to Stardom. There is an international aspect to it. Mm-hmm. I think Stardom right now is more worried about getting things back to where they want it to be in Japan before they start doing things like Stardom shows in the U.S., except for WrestleMania weekend, which is always special, right? That's the thing. You can come over here and do a special thing for Mania weekend. So I think that's where their focus is, especially because now they have a legit, serious rival with Marigold and with the talent and the connections that Rossi has. So I think that's probably where it's going. And Colin asked,
can I throw something in there?
Please go ahead.
Can I say something? You got Historic X over on November, in the 17th of November. And then you got them participating in Wrestle Dynasty in January. I think there's a lot to do with they're writing their own ship, like writing RIGHTIN. They're writing their own ship right now. And then once they're able to get a room read on the viability of the promotion outwardly with X over and Wrestle Dynasty, I think we'll see 2025 with more integration with stateside in the promotions. But they just got out of their Grand Prix. They're just, the timing wise, now is not the time to be hitting the ground running. You want to build to November.
Yeah, and once you have things anchored up where you're the number one company, and they still are, although Marigold's doing pretty well, but
Marigold's still boutique still,
Yeah, but I think they want to shore that up before they start stretching too far out. I think they just want to shore up. And then Colin asked if I've been watching the current sumo tournament. Well, of course I have. Yes, I'm in. I'm all in on the sumo. And by the way, just very briefly, Onosato is my favorite guy. I think this is Kotozakura's turn, especially with Teruno Fuji, the Yokozuna out. I think Kotozakura is my prediction. Is that Kotozakura is going to take this one? But I love the Grand Sumo. NHK, which is the public television provider, airs a lot of English content on their YouTube page, and each night of the tournament, it's a day behind, so you have to kind of avoid spoilers, but that's not too hard to do with sumo. They don't show up on ESPN's app or anything like that, but they have a nice, neat, tight 27-28 minute highlight video of that day's actions, where you really see all the important matches that go on in the tournament, and they help keep track of it. And it's well produced and well done. I watch that each night. And Colin says Onosato for the win. I'm rooting for him, but I think it's Kotozakura's turn. I like Kotozakura too. But and Colin also mentions that the Marigold tournament that's currently happening has been good so far. We mentioned that everybody has to have a round robin tournament. God forbid there's a Japanese company that doesn't have a real long tournament. So Marigold just started theirs, and it's got a talent. They have an interesting mix of people that are learning the craft, and people who are outstanding at the craft. Like you got Utami Hayashishita, you've got people like Sarai, and then you have some people who barely tie their boots yet. And I don't mean that as an insult, but they're that green.
They're just not there yet.
They're just that green. And so what you don't really have much of in Marigold is that mid card. You know what I mean? It seems like everybody is either great or green as grass. And so what you don't really have is the mid card. That's what they're going to be building over time. All right. So I did want to take a break briefly from the Tanahashi history to talk about Kuniaki Kobayashi. I didn't know I was going to be doing this a couple of days ago because I didn't know. He just passed away on the 9th, right? So, but this guy is a very influential person. I think he's worth spending some time on. So Kuniaki Kobayashi, born January 11th, 1956, and he joined the New Japan dojo so early, I think the paint on the walls might have still been wet. But to get an idea, remember we've talked about it, March of 1972 is when New Japan began. Well, he joined in 1972 and began appearing on shows regularly in February 1973. So he had to be among the very first people to come out of that dojo, really. I mean, it had to be some of the very first to sign up once Inoki was fired from JWA. So the issue with him is that he wasn't a huge guy. He did jobs for the first 3 years of his career. Now, we don't have 100% complete records, but his first win listed in wrestling data is November 24th, 1975. So almost 3 years into his career when he beat Masanobu Kurisu. It was listed as his only win we could find from that entire year. Just to give you so he's doing for 3 years, basically doing opening night jobs, night after night after night. So talk about persistence. This guy had it. And he began to kind of slowly work his way up. And what I mean by that is by 1977, again, he began in 1973. 1977, he was winning every once in a while, but it was 4 to 5 losses and a draw to every win. He did beat, though, Satoru Sayama a few times, who was an even younger lion than he was, or a tiger cub, I guess it would be. So that was Satoru Sayama, who would become a pivotal figure in all of pro wrestling and certainly in Kobayashi's life. So by 1978, he'd almost made it to 500, Jeremy. So here we are, we're winning almost as much as he's losing, but not quite. Anyway, he continued on, though, and he stayed with New Japan. And in 1980, you started to see him wrestle guys that would become part of the junior heavyweight revolution. He wrestled George Takano, who would become the Cobra. Dynamite Kid was in there. And that's because New Japan had plans for him and all of these guys. So Satoru Sayama, I mentioned him a little bit earlier. He had been taken off the shows in Japan and sent over to England. He was wrestling there in World of Sport as Sammy Lee. Basically because wrestling promoters don't know the difference between China and Japan. So he's an Asian guy. He's Bruce Lee's cousin. There it is, right there. I'm not from Hong Kong. Never mind. They don't know. So he was Sammy Lee over there. And meanwhile, they had plans because there had been a popular manga series called Tiger Mask. And it ran as a manga in weekly installments from 1968 to 1971. And then it was made into an anime series from 1969 to 1971. Now, do you know the storyline behind the original Tiger Mask manga there, Jeremy, or the anime? I don't know if you looked into this much.
I have not, but I'm assuming that he gained the powers of a tiger via a mask.
Well, not quite though. Tiger Mask was about a pro wrestler. He was a villain in the U.S., but he met a Japanese kid from the same orphanage that he had attended, because, of course, all superheroes are orphans in some way, right? Who said he wanted to grow up to be a villain like Tiger Mask. Well, that inspired Tiger Mask to change his ways to become a better example. And he said that he would then become a good guy after that. And there was an evil stable that would keep sending heels after him to try to stop him after turning his back on the heel group. That was the whole thing. So basically it was Jerry Lawler and the Jimmy Hart family for the story. That was the same story. That's the exact same story, independently of one another. Just classic pro wrestling story, but it was told as a manga and an animated series that had like 105 episodes. They did that. Anyway, that was in the very early 70s. Well, New Japan licensed the character. They liked Satoru Sayama a lot, and they chose him for the role. But the issue was Sayama was a small guy, but very agile. And of course, in the anime and in the manga, Tiger Mask was portrayed almost like a luchador with the dives and the jumps and everything else. So they needed a guy that could do all that stuff. They also needed someone for him to wrestle. So while they were freshening Sayama up as Sammy Lee and just getting him out of everybody's minds, and no one was seeing him lose or anything like that, New Japan began booking smaller, quicker guys, getting them ready for Tiger Mask while Sayama was in the UK. So they sent Kobayashi, who was a good hand and had been there forever, but was a little guy, and they sent him to Mexico to the UWA promotion. Keep in mind, virtually no junior heavyweight presence in Japanese wrestling at all at that point. It just wasn't the thing. And so, but there was in Mexico, certainly, right? The small guys can really excel. So he went to the UWA promotion, which back then was one of the majors at the time. It was EMLL before it was CMLL, and UWA. These were big promotions drawing big crowds. And this is where he got his first real push, like 7 years into his career. The UWA put him in some very high-profile spots. He squared off with the Misioneros de la Muerte. I love that name, the Death Missionaries. And he tangled with Los Villanos. All of those people are Hall of Famers. And they did a lot of these hair versus hair matches. So he had a little group with Hiro Saito, Gran Hamada, and they would wrestle the Missionaries and the Villanos, and they would do these things with hair versus mask matches and hair versus hair matches. And they won most of them until it was finally the big moment when they, so it would build it up. So it would mean a lot when they finally did lose their hair, and they got their head shaved, and they were banished after that. And but he had a good run in UWA. It was the first real main event type of run he'd ever had. And he made a stop in the dying Los Angeles promotion with the LaBelles. Mike and Gene LaBelle ran that company in LA before going back to New Japan. So in 1981, Satoru Sayama debuted against the Dynamite Kid as Tiger Mask, and it changed the wrestling business completely. Now a smaller guy could be a main event draw in Japan. There had been junior heavyweights like Danny Hodge and Jerry Jarrett here in the United States, smaller guys that had drawn in the right spots of the U.S., but they wrestled basically heavyweight style, just smaller guys doing it. Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask introduced this whole Japanese style of junior heavyweight wrestling. It was that mix of lucha libre, that a little bit of the lightning quick grappling wrist lock moves that you see Zack Sabre do that came from the World of Sport era. And it was this nice little hybrid that nobody else was doing. And of course you had the speed, the sheer speed of Sayama and Dynamite. And Sayama was a big martial artist, so he also had kicks and strikes. No one had ever seen anything like it. And it was an absolute sensation. So other rivals were built up because, Tiger Mask was heavily protected. Good Lord, he was protected because he was doing great. So didn't beat him very often, which means you needed to keep churning out new people for him to wrestle. Dynamite Kid would come and go, but other rivals were built up. They got Mark Rocco from England because they had success with Dynamite, and they made him the Black Tiger. And then Kobayashi was brought in to face Satoru Sayama at that point too, and they gave him the nickname the Tiger Hunter. And so now all of a sudden he's in a much more prominent spot than he had been in his first 7 years in wrestling. And he's in part of this revolution that's changing the business. And he joined up with a heel group, kind of a heel group. They were Ishin Gundan is what they were called. And they were led by Riki Choshu. Now, Choshu didn't cheat. It wasn't a House of Torture type thing. But Choshu grew his hair long like a rock star, and he teamed up with Killer Khan, and he had Masa Saito was in there, and they were just anti-establishment. They would tell the matchmakers to shove it. They're going to do things their way, and they would clash with the classic New Japan lineup of Fujinami and Kengo Kimura, who were the straight-laced baby faces. And while they didn't cheat to win, there was always this tension between the guys who were a little bit rebellious versus the more straight-laced crew. Well, he joined the more rebellious group with Choshu. This took off like a rocket also, by the way. Those matches were real good. People kind of got into it, and it split the crowd because some people, you remember how it was at the very beginning of Stone Cold? And I'm not trying to compare Choshu. Although Choshu was a monster star in Japan, I'm not trying to say he was
you
like
could
Steve
just tell
Austin
the
in
energy
Japan,
was split. Like there was already growing.
and then like it resonated with some of the salary men out there. Is like telling your boss to shove it is kind of cool. I'm kind of digging this. I'm kind of digging some of this. So he joined up with that group, and it worked out well for them. But later on, it worked so well that Giant Baba from All Japan Wrestling poached the entire group, took the whole group over to All Japan. And suddenly Riki Choshu and his gang went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. And that created one of the biggest rivalries in Japanese history with Genichiro Tenryu, basically doing the same thing of this group coming in and saying, we're doing things our way, get out of the way. We'll run you over if you got a problem with it. And Tenryu had a problem with it. And Tenryu and Choshu were magic in the ring against each other. And it created one of the great rivalries of that run. So they stayed there for a few years, and they were in All Japan. Sayama had retired, by the way. So Satoru Sayama retired. And with that, New Japan gave up its license of the Tiger Mask character. Didn't need it anymore. Didn't have Sayama. All Japan plucked it up, and they put the hood on one of the greatest wrestlers that has ever lived, Mitsuharu Misawa, early in his career. So now you have two Tiger Masks, a second Tiger Mask, only this one's in All Japan, and they're both all-time greats. Like Sayama, very different, but both all-time greats. But they had Kobayashi, right? So, of course, Kobayashi feuded with Misawa. They have the Tiger Hunter is right here. So now that we have a Tiger Mask, we'll have them feud with each other, and they did. And they also picked up Dynamite Kid because Sayama was gone. Dynamite Kid was available, and he went over to All Japan. So he all of a sudden he had all of his old rivals and a new one in Misawa, but a Tiger Mask to feud with. He won the NWA International Junior Heavyweight title in All Japan, beat Dynamite Kid, and lost it a couple months later to Misawa. When by the way, they deactivated that title in '86. All Japan just moved on to other things, and it's remained dormant. They remained dormant until 2007. That title was then re-established by the Toryumon company in Mexico. And you know who won it in the tournament?
Who?
Hirooki Goto.
Of course he did.
Hirooki Goto. Can you even imagine him as a junior?
I know, but I also appreciate that the trend of New Japan like making titles go away and then bringing them back is still just going strong.
Still going strong, isn't it? And if you want to hear the wackiness of all that, and we could get into this, but the Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid title was the WWF Junior Heavyweight title.
Of course.
They hadn't even established the IWGP title, because why wouldn't it be? There's an explanation for that, but everyone took WWF seriously. Remember how they used to have things like I talked about this, the Madison Square Garden series, and they called it the MSG League. That was one of the original names for the G1 tournament.
Right.
Anything associated with New York and the WWF was a big deal.
Big deal.
So that's the belt they used. They hadn't established the IWGP title, but that would be something Kobayashi was involved in as well, because they went back to New Japan. That whole group, they went back to New Japan, and Inoki lured him back, and he won the new All Japan New Japan IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. Just been established very recently. He won that title from Nobuhiko Takada in the tournament final, and because Shiro Koshinaka, who was the original winner of the belt, had been hurt. Kobayashi held the title for a while, lost it to Hiroshi Hase. So he's one of the first IWGP Junior Heavyweight champions now. And in April of 1989, he went to the Tokyo Dome, and he was the very first opponent for Jushin Thunder Liger. Now, he had wrestled Keiichi Yamada before, the guy under the Liger mask, but once they pulled Yamada out, basically did what they did with
that guy.
He became that guy. That he was the very first opponent for Yamada as Jushin Thunder Liger. So that'll always have that. And he wrestled all through the 1990s, which was a real challenge, Jeremy, because in 1992, he was first diagnosed with cancer. 1992, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, had surgery to remove it, the tumor. And he also had bouts of cancer in 1999, but he would undergo treatment and beat it. He finally stepped back from wrestling when he had to have his liver operated on in 2000. That ended his in-ring career with any regularity. He would go on to make a couple of appearances. He appeared in the Wrestle Kingdom 11 New Japan Rumble But that was, that pre-show thing when they bring back some of the legends. He was in that. But he wasn't
Rambo like we're going to have in a couple of days.
He stayed with the company, though, even after throughout all of his cancer treatments and after his in-ring career was over. And he was the caretaker of the New Japan dojo. That was his job after that. And if you listen to the backstage comments, especially after Sendai, you heard many people mention that he was the guy that made the chanko in the morning, that stew that everybody eats. It's something that it's in every dojo, pro wrestling, sumo wrestling. It's a mix of pork and vegetables, and and you eat it with ungodly amounts of rice, and that's how you get sumo wrestlers, right? But it's also something done through pro wrestling dojos, and many of the young lions learned how to make the chanko from Kobayashi, and he would teach them how to properly clean, because that's all got there's a ritual to how you clean the dojo, and all that, because it's sacred space. And a lot of the guys had memories of having to scrub every single centimeter of the dojo per his instructions. And that's just something he did all the way up until he got too sick to do it anymore. And the other thing I noticed, Jeremy, from the comments, despite all of these accolades in the junior heavyweight division, Shingo, Great Khan, and some of the others talked about Kobayashi as encouraging them to put on weight, to get bigger. He said, we need big guys. He said he didn't like smaller wrestlers. And sometimes I wonder if the 8 years he spent in the prelims before Tiger Mask kind of soured him on the idea. It's like, no, you got to be big. They like big guys. And so he was the one telling Shingo, when Shingo said when he bulked up, when he got to New Japan, it was Kobayashi who was just saying, good, that's what we need to see. We need to see some size on you, have some chanko. So encouraging guys to get bigger. And Shota Umino said that Kobayashi is the one who taught him the fisherman suplex, because that had been Kobayashi's finisher.
That was his signature, right?
That was his signature move, was the fisherman suplex.
Did he create that move?
I don't think he did, but it was his finisher right there. Oh, by the way, at Wrestle Kingdom 11, I forgot to mention this. He was eliminated by, of course, Tiger Mask. So, but the current Tiger Mask. So all the way through the generations, right? So Tiger Mask said he called Sayama and gave him the news, and it choked up Sayama to hear that his old rival was gone. And Tanahashi certainly choked up while talking about him and what he meant to the company. And the outpouring of tributes to him just shows that Kobayashi was a big encouraging influence in the dojo throughout his run. It seems like a lot of the young lions felt like he had helped them and been a voice of support all through, just urging them along in their careers. And it seems like everybody's going to miss the guy. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in February of this year, and there's very little coming back from that one. That's one of the very worst. There are no good cancers, but that's one of the very worst. And this time he was not able to overcome it. He passed away on September 9th. So 68 years old, just a man who was tough as nails, because he overcame cancer a bunch of times before it finally got him, and somebody that's definitely going to be missed in the New Japan family.
I thought you did a great job with that retrospective. I kind of wanted to give a pause and a beat, because in the middle of it, I was going to plan on cutting this and putting it up as its own segment. So I wanted a natural spot right there. But honestly, that was really good, man. I thought you did a great job with that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And before we go, I want to mention this because Colin brings it up, and I'm glad he did. September 19th, so a week from today, the Dump Matsumoto series is coming to Netflix. Yeah, so we can talk about that. Maybe well, not next time.
We will not be talking about Vince McMahon the week after. We will not.
Oh God, I'm really worried about that.
I'll find a podcast to chat about that, but one, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Two, I think I already kind of know what it's gonna say.
I really worry about that one in some ways, because Bill Simmons and David Shoemaker, the guys that are behind it, the sports guy, and they just don't have the depth on this stuff to really do it justice. David Shoemaker's pretty bad as a historian. He's a poor wrestling. He claims to be a wrestling historian, and Bill Simmons has given him this platform, but he doesn't actually have any context for what he's talking about. And whenever these guys try to do something journalistic when it comes to wrestling. They bungled the hell out of that Andre the Giant mess of a documentary on HBO. And this is a delicate subject, Jeremy. There's some nasty stuff in here. And in the hand, I wish it were in the hands of a couple of smarter guys than Simmons and Shoemaker.
Do you watch the Netflix documentaries much?
Yeah, I watch a lot of things. Yeah, I do.
You know what the format's going to be like. They're going to be, each episode is going to be a different part of the legacy of Vince McMahon, and they're going to touch on all these things, and then they'll revisit things. They're going to have a theme. They're going to have an idea, and I have no doubt that everything that happened in the last year is something that they're going to hammer on. This thing is going to be in perpetuity on Netflix, and I think Vince McMahon is not going to look good coming out of it.
Well, there's no way to make him look good. I mean,
there's a way to make him look good, but it's not going to look good for the people who do that.
Yeah, I mean, Simmons has other interests that are more important than his wrestling connections and all that. I'm not saying he's going to make Vince look good. I'm just saying that these guys don't have the depth of knowledge to understand necessarily what they're doing. So that's the thing. So,
but we won't be talking about that here. We did touch on it briefly. It's going to suck for the people that have to.
Oh man, it's going to be an uncomfortable watch, and I feel like the Power Bombshells are going to have to eat some of that lunch too. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Dave. Sorry, Garrett. Sorry, Mel. Sorry, Sam.
yeah, exactly. But
all right, take us out of here, man.
All right. With that in mind, when we come back next week, right here at our usual time, we will be covering the Saturday show from Hokkaido, and then we'll be looking ahead to any news that comes up and previewing Destruction in Kobe. And we'll be able to spread out and talk a little bit more about Tanahashi's history. So we look forward to having you all back. Thanks for everybody who watched us here live. Anyone who listened to us as a podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and all those goodies. Power Bombshells will be back on Sunday. For Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This has been Speaking of Strong Style, and we'll talk to you again real soon.